In 1939, the United States Air Corps was a ghost. It had fewer than 3,000 combat planes. Most of them were obsolete. Nazi Germany had the Luftwaffe, a modern, terrifying force of over 4,000 state-of-the-art aircraft. The problem wasn't just money. It was time. Building a bomber, specifically the massive 4-engine B-24 Liberator, was an art form. It was built like a house or a custom yacht. Workers stood around a stationary fuselage, adding parts, one by one. They hand-filed aluminum skins to fit. It took hundreds of thousands of man-hours to build one plane. At the rate American aviation companies were working, catching up to Hitler would take 20 years. Then, President Roosevelt issued a challenge that sounded insane. He didn't ask for hundreds of planes. He asked for 50,000 planes a year. The aviation experts laughed. They said it was physically impossible. They said, "You can't mass-produce an airplane like a car. It's too complex. The tolerances are too tight. It will crash." But there was one group of men who didn't laugh. The auto men. The men of Detroit. Specifically a man named Charles Cast Iron Sorensen. He was Henry Ford's right-hand man, the production genius behind the Model T assembly line. He looked at the B-24 bomber. He didn't see a complex machine. He saw just another product. He made a promise that shocked the world. He said, "I can build you one an hour." One an hour. The aviation industry was building one a month. Sorensen was proposing a miracle. This is the story of how he did it. This is the story of Willow Run.
The story begins in San Diego. The government sent Charlie Sorensen to the Consolidated Aircraft Factory, the people who designed the B-24. They wanted Ford to build parts for Consolidated. Sorensen walked through their factory. He was horrified. He saw the B-24s sitting in the yard under the sun. He saw workers tripping over each other. He saw inefficiency. He famously said, "This isn't a factory, it's a hobby shop." He knew that Ford couldn't just build parts. The system was broken. They needed a new system. That night, back in his hotel room at the Coronado Hotel, Sorensen couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the B-24. 30,000 parts, 360,000 rivets. He took out a pencil. He took the hotel's stationery, and he started to draw. He didn't draw a plane. He drew a building. He sketched a factory that was 1 mile long. Why a mile? Because that's how much space you needed to start with raw steel at one end and have a flying bomber roll out the other. He broke the plane down, not into a fuselage and wings, but into modules. The center wing, the nose, the tail, the engines, all moving on a conveyor belt, converging at the end. By 4 a.m., he had designed the greatest factory in human history on a piece of paper. He flew back to Detroit. He showed the sketch to Edsel Ford, Henry Ford's son. "We will build the whole damn plane," Sorensen said, "and we will do it at Willow Run." Willow Run was a quiet soybean farm owned by Henry Ford. It was about to become the center of the world.
The construction of Willow Run was a war in itself. They had to move 600,000 cubic yards of dirt. It was the largest room ever built by man, 3.5 million square feet. It was so big it had its own weather. Clouds would form inside the ceiling. But the building was the easy part. The hard part was the culture war. The aviation engineers from Consolidated hated the auto engineers from Ford. They spoke different languages. Aviation approach, soft tooling, hand drilling holes, flexible jigs. If two parts didn't fit, you filed them down until they did. Every plane was unique. Auto approach, hard tooling, massive steel dies, precision stamping. Every part had to be identical. No filing, no adjusting. If it didn't fit, the machine was wrong. The aircraft designers screamed, "You can't stamp aluminum like you stamp a car fender. It will crack. The metal has memory." Sorensen screamed back, "Then we will teach the metal a new memory." Ford spent millions building massive steel dies, the kind used to make car bodies, to stamp out aircraft wings. It was a gamble. If the dies were off by a fraction of a millimeter, millions of parts would be scrap. The biggest challenge was the center wing section. This was the backbone of the B-24. It held the engines, the fuel, the bombs, and the fuselage. It was a nightmare of wiring and plumbing. Consolidated built it vertically. It took weeks. Sorensen laid it flat. He put it on a moving line. He had machines drill 40 holes at once. The aviation guys held their breath. It worked. The parts fit perfectly. It was the triumph of interchangeability. But just as the factory was ready to start, disaster struck. 1942. Pearl Harbor has happened. America is at war. The nation is desperate for bombers. All eyes are on Willow Run. And Willow Run is failing. The press started calling it Will It Run. Critics in Washington accused Ford of wasting tax dollars. "Where are the bombers, Mr. Ford?" they asked. "Where is the 1 an hour?" The problem wasn't the machines, it was the people. Willow Run was in the middle of nowhere, 30 miles from Detroit. There were no houses, no roads, no water. Thousands of workers arrived and found a swamp. They lived in trailer towns. They lived in tents. They slept in their cars. The mud was knee-deep. It was called the Battle of the Mud. Turnover was 100% a month. For every worker they hired, one quit. Inside, the sheer complexity of the B-24 was biting back. There were 30,000 engineering changes from the Air Force. Every day, the government would send a telegram, change the gun turret, move the radio, add armor. Every change meant stopping the massive assembly line, retooling the dies. It was chaos. By the end of 1942, Ford had promised hundreds of planes. They had delivered 56. The miracle looked like a disaster. Hitler was winning. The B-24s weren't coming. Sorensen needed a new workforce, and he needed to freeze the design. He was about to tap into a resource that no one expected. The men were gone to war. So, America called the women. By 1943, the draft had taken the men. To save Willow Run, Ford had to break a century of tradition. They opened the gates to women. They came from farms, they came from kitchens, they came from high schools. They were told that factories were dirty, dangerous places not fit for ladies. They didn't care. One of them was a young widow named Rose Will Monroe. She worked at Willow Run. She drove rivets into the ribs of the B-24. When Hollywood came to make a propaganda film, they picked her. She became the face of a movement. The real-life Rosie the Riveter. The skeptics said women couldn't handle the heavy machinery. They were wrong. It turned out women were better at it. The B-24 required thousands of tiny, complex wiring connections. It required precision riveting. The women had steadier hands. They had more patience, and they had something else, a fierce motivation. Many of them had husbands, brothers, or sons fighting in Europe. Every rivet they drove was a step closer to bringing them home. Ford even hired midgets, little people. Why? Because the inside of a B-24 wing was tight. A normal man couldn't fit, but a 4-foot-tall person could crawl right inside to inspect the welds. Willow Run became a melting pot of American determination. Everyone had a role. Everyone had a mission. And finally, the giant machine began to wake up. By 1944, Sorensen had solved the last big problem. Remember the 30,000 engineering changes that kept stopping the line? Sorensen made a brilliant decision. He said, "Ignore them. Don't stop the line. Build the plane as it was designed. Let it roll off the line. Then tow it to a separate building and make the changes there." He created modification centers. This freed the beast. The assembly line never stopped, not for a minute. Now, look at the line. It moves at a steady creep. Raw aluminum ingots go in one end. They are stamped into ribs. The ribs become wings. The wings meet the fuselage. The engines are bolted on. It was a river of aluminum, a mile-long mechanical organism. In early 1944, Willow Run hit its stride. The numbers became terrifying to the Germans. In January, 100 planes. In March, 250 planes. By summer, they were defying the laws of physics. At its peak, Willow Run was producing one B-24 Liberator heavy bomber every 63 minutes. Think about that. Every time you sit down to watch an hour-long TV show, by the time the credits roll, America has built another heavy bomber. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The airfield outside was choked with planes. They were being built faster than the Air Force could fly them away. It was the arsenal of democracy unleashed. Hitler's Luftwaffe could shoot down 10 planes, and Willow Run would replace them by lunchtime. The war was won right here, in Michigan. By the end of the war, Willow Run had built 8,685 B-24 Liberators, almost half of all the B-24s ever flown. Charles Sorensen's promise of 1 an hour had been kept. But the legacy of Willow Run isn't just about the planes. It changed the world. It proved that mass production could be applied to anything, not just cars, but airplanes, ships, houses, computers. The techniques perfected by Ford at Willow Run are the same techniques that build your iPhone today. Before Willow Run, the world built things by hand for the few. After Willow Run, the world built things by the million for the many. It was the moment the old world of craftsmanship died, and the modern world of scale was born. The aviation experts said it couldn't be done. They said a car company couldn't build a plane. They said tolerances were too tight. But they forgot one thing. They forgot the power of American stubbornness. They forgot that when you bet against Detroit, you lose. If you enjoyed this story of American ingenuity, hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments, do you think modern manufacturing could ever pull off a miracle like this again? Thanks for watching.